Tuesdays, welcome back to another Tuesday, another week, another video. Man, last week was a really bad week, and I still kind of haven't gotten over it. You know what, it's okay, because sadness is a part of life, and we have to be glad that it's a part of life, because it's needed, you know? My train of thought went from being sad to sharing sad. I'm not always a big fan of sharing sad. I always like positive vibes. But at the same time, I realise that we can't be happy all the time, and it's also very unhealthy to show just happiness all the time. And I think that's where, like, my stem of leaving in things like burps and farts and arguments and me stacking, which I do all the time, in my videos and vlogs. Because I realise, at least I hope, that it's powerful. And the reason that it's powerful is because it's vulnerable. My train of thought got to the station and we learn from vulnerable. That's what today's video is all about. Being vulnerable. I love vulnerable. No, I don't. That's a lie. That's a lie. I actually don't like being vulnerable. I think if you like being vulnerable, you're probably a little bit weird. What I meant to say is, whilst I don't particularly love the feeling of being vulnerable, vulnerability is a beautiful thing to see. Vulnerability, as in real vulnerability, is being human in its basic, raw, often broken form. It's real and it's exposed, and sometimes it's not comfortable, but I honestly think that it's one of the best things that we can be. Vulnerability, as I tweeted recently, which is my inspiration to make this script, is a superpower. Vulnerability is our superpower, and we all have it. What is vulnerability? Google says, the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Now there's a lot of sad words in that definition. Sad, scary, dark words. If those words to have a colour, that colour would be grey. Exposed, attacked, harmed, emotional. And I, in particular, and I'm sure many of you can relate, I attribute my feelings this way of being brought up in a South Asian family. It's just how it is. We've always been taught that vulnerability is bad. It's weak, and weakness is bad. You know, in our culture, like, you're literally told not to feel. I have been grown up, not just not to feel, but with the... There is a spider in my room. I will remove that later. Yes, we've been literally told to not feel and to turn off emotions. There is something, it's a skill that I'm not particularly proud of, but that I recently became very aware of, and it's like when I cry, I can just stop crying. It's so bizarre. I can feel sad, and then after like 2 seconds of crying, I'm just like I could smile, I could just not feel. Just be like, I'm not sad, because if I'm sad, I'm weak, and if I'm weak, I can't survive, you know? Always been taught to survive. I hate that. I mean, I love surviving, don't get me wrong, but that's not how we thrive as people. It's come to me as an epiphany recently. It's why I'm making this probably very rambly video, but just go along with it, okay? I've recognised it, I hate it within myself, and I'm trying really hard to change that, because it's like Elsa, right? Elsa says this. Don't let them in, don't let them see. Not gonna do a big rendition for you, but you know, let it go, let it go. Elsa knew what's what. She knows what's what. And we need to be vulnerable. We need to get our emotions out. We need to be able to process them, because feeling the bad, opening those gates to allowing us to feel the bad, also means allowing us to feel the good. And what is life? Why are we even here if it's not to feel some form of good? I've thought about this a lot, right? And I've thought about what vulnerability is not. And vulnerability is not oversharing. It's not oversharing with anyone. Vulnerability doesn't mean that you tell your entire life story and expose your inner darkest secrets to the lady who happens to be next to you at the Tesco checkout. That's not vulnerability. It doesn't mean that you have to share everything, and it doesn't mean that you have to share anything to anyone. The right to hear someone be vulnerable has to be earned, you know? You can be very protective and conservative, if that's the right word to use, of yourself and your stories and your feelings and your emotions and your whatevers to 999 people, and you can be vulnerable to one person, and that's okay. And here's the other thing about vulnerability that I have thought about and decided. Vulnerability does not always feel good. In fact, most of the time, it feels pretty damn shit. Especially when it's not received well, and that's something that I experienced recently, and I guess that's why I'm talking about it, and I'd be really passionate, so excuse me. But that's okay, because there's still benefits to being vulnerable that, in my opinion, outweigh the negatives and that make it a superpower. What? And I wanted to talk about what those benefits are, and I wanted to do that because I wanted to speak directly to two types of people. Before I do that, I'm falling off my bed. Give me a second. The first kind of person that I would really love this video to reach is the person who feels that they can't be vulnerable, who can't explain, expose, disclose how they feel. And that could be for a whole range of reasons. Maybe you're in a crappy relationship. I'm not just talking romantic, maybe it's a friendship, maybe it's like a familial bond. Just, you know, you don't feel like you have the connection that allows you to be vulnerable. Because you might feel judged, or maybe it's got nothing to do with a connection, but a type of upbringing or something that you've been taught, whether that be consciously or subconsciously, to think that sharing how you feel and saying how you feel and putting yourself in what may seem like a sense of weakness, a state of vulnerability, but to say that that's bad, you know, because it's really not. There may be times where you can't be vulnerable. You literally cannot, because doing so may put you in physical harm's way. Someone might, you know, do not nice things to you, and that is a very good reason to not be vulnerable. No, yeah. To not be vulnerable. Or perhaps if being vulnerable means that you're then going to be kicked out, maybe it's something to do with your own identity, and then someone is going to remove resources that you rely on, and that might not leave you with any place to go. Like, that's clearly not very good. So being vulnerable comes with a caveat of being safe. But at the same time, do also know that there are places, be them online or through phone lines, where you can confidentially be vulnerable to someone if you are not yet in a position where you can truly do something about your situation. So that's the first person I wanted this video to speak to. People who cannot or feel like they cannot be vulnerable. And the second person that I wanted to speak to is anyone else who witnesses people being vulnerable, which is basically everyone. It is very easy to laugh at someone or to judge someone who is being vulnerable, or, most commonly, from what I've seen, it's very easy to feel offended when someone is disclosing their vulnerability to you, because sometimes it can be in a way that you don't want to hear. Perhaps that vulnerability is calling you out because they're saying, hey, I don't like this, and the thing that they don't like or the thing that they're experiencing may be a direct result of something that you have or have not done. What I really want is for just one person to listen to this horrific ramble and see that being vulnerable, even if it may cause you, the listener, offense or confusion, it's a really brave thing for that person to be doing, and it's something that you, me, everyone should respect. And if someone's vulnerability and communication of that vulnerability means that you are feeling offended, you have every right yourself to feel vulnerable in response. You may feel attacked or embarrassed or angry or called out on, and that's okay. But it's what you do with that that's important. And the other thing that I've seen far too commonly and that I'm experiencing right now is that the vulnerability that you have comes from a place of strength, because you are able to speak your mind and say how you feel when the other people may not be there yet. They may not be as strong as you, you know? It's funny, because I feel like in those scenarios you're considered the weak person and the other people are considered the strong people for, like, staying. That's just, it's not right. It's the other way around. In fact, there's something that I saw quite recently that really, I think, speaks to what I'm saying, and I posted this on my Instagram, but take a look, it's right here. I'm going to read it to you. Your parents did the best they could, and their choices wounded you. You love someone, and you know it's not healthy to keep them in your life. You're terrified to take the next step, and you know it's the right thing to do. You want to have healthy relationships, and unresolved trauma is making it difficult. You're afraid to fail, and you believe in yourself. It's possible for these things to simultaneously be true, and the reason that's okay is if you're vulnerable enough to embrace it. So yeah, if someone is saying something to you that makes you feel or act a certain way, you're entitled to act and feel that certain way. But remember, that's all I ask, just think about how difficult it is, not just for you to hear, but for that person to be vulnerable enough to say that in the first place. And this could be a whole host of things. I said I want to try and keep examples out because I don't want to make people feel like this isn't applicable. It's a hugely applicable situation. That's why I'm saying everyone has this superpower. You know, it could be like coming out, that's one example, or saying that you like or dislike something. It could be saying that you're very self-conscious about something, like the way you look in certain clothes because of your weight. Or it could be that you're feeling hurt or scared by someone doing or saying certain things or not doing or saying certain things. There's a whole buffet of experiences which can lead to someone feeling vulnerable. And there's equally a whole other yummy buffet of benefits that being vulnerable has, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. The first is that vulnerability is empowering. And contrary to the many connotations of it being weak, I actually view vulnerability as being like a form of armour. If you have things that other people put you down for, I feel that it then becomes like a weight on your mind. It does for me. And that then ends up holding you back. And it gives other people a hold over you. And I'll give you an example of this one. So my family, for example, have said for the longest time, oh, Shaaba is such a liar. When I was younger, I used to lie a lot as a child because if I didn't do that, I would never get to see my friends because I lived under very strict premises. And as the narrative goes, because Shaaba lies, Shaaba is a liar. Shaaba is a liar, she's a lying kid. And I agree, I did tell lies. I told lies so that I could see people and as a result fit in somewhere, or at least attempt to. And I used to hide that so hard, or feel very embarrassed when other people brought it up, like my family, particularly if it was around other people who may not have known. And the reason that I felt that way is because I thought it made me seem like stupid, you know, or embarrassing or cringy. But it's not. I don't feel embarrassed or cringy about the fact that I used to lie as a child at all. And it's because there were reasons that I felt I had to do that. Vulnerability also exposes reasons all the time, and that's something that I never would have thought of before. Since talking about it, since opening up and being vulnerable about the way I feel about that, it has helped me understand why I did it a lot better, and also helped me accept that that is part of my past. Now I'm too honest to the point where I can often be very brutal and people don't like it very much. And in another sense, I definitely overshare. I feel like this channel has so much information on here about me that many people would have drawn a boundary or a line to a lot sooner. But you know, I think it's powerful for me. I'm not saying everyone should, but for me, it's powerful for me to be able to do that. And at least I know that the skeletons that I have in my closet are ones that I'm okay with sharing. And that's how I see it as armour, because if someone else then gets a hold of that and shares that on my behalf, I'm chill with it, you know? I'm at peace with it. Fine. Go on. Tell people I used to lie. I know I did. The second benefit to being vulnerable is that it's freeing, and it's closure, and it's acceptance. And that point that I just made beforehand actually made me think a lot about Nikki Tutorials, who's a very prominent creator on YouTube. She's been doing makeup for a very long time, and very recently she was threatened by information. Somebody knew that she was trans, and it's something that she hadn't shared online before. And so she was like, oh well, I'm gonna come out to the world, to the internet world, and let people know that I'm trans. And yes, what an absolutely horrible situation to be in, to know that someone else knows something very intimate about you that you are not ready to share, and then to feel the need to do it on not your terms. That sucks. But also, how powerful must that have felt for her to be able to do it? I'm not saying that people should force people to share that information. That's not what vulnerability is. That's what I'm saying. It's not oversharing, it's on your terms. But if you can reach that point of vulnerability where you can share things, you take the power away from the assholes who are trying to hold it over you. And more importantly, it's freeing for you. Other people might see it as the fact that, you know, other people have got you in handcuffs, which may be the case, but by not being your authentic self, you're kind of putting yourself in handcuffs too. I'm not saying they're comparable, I realise this is sounding kind of controversial, but if you're ready to be vulnerable, talking about it is a way to release those handcuffs for yourself that you kind of put yourself in, not intentionally, but just because of the scenarios of what's happened to you and the way your journey has planned out. Talking about it releases the handcuffs, and it also provides you with a sense of closure. What I've just gone through, for example, was me being vulnerable and telling somebody who I have put on a pedestal for the longest time that actually there are some actions that they have done that means that they're not deserving of being there. And whilst it certainly has not created a happy or positive situation, it definitely does feel freeing, you know, in my own sense of self, to know that I have done the right thing because I'm being true to me. Being vulnerable also might help people who are in a similar or same position as you. And it can help people who are not in your position by allowing them to understand and empathise with others who might be, and therefore making society more accommodating as a whole. Wouldn't that be a lovely theoretical world to be in? I'll give you another example. For my PhD, I'm doing a study on the education around mental health illness. online. Now, I'm not very savvy on certain aspects of mental health at all, and it has been so wholesome and heartwarming and eye-opening to hear other creators talk very vulnerably about their own personal experiences in this way. By being vulnerable and disclosing these very personal stories, they're taking the negativity and the sadness of those stories and turning them into very powerful tools. And all you need to do is just take one quick look at the comments to see just how valuable and needed that is to the rest of society. To see people say things like, oh my gosh, I love this. Oh my gosh, I feel less alone. Oh my gosh, this has genuinely saved my life. Like, that's an incredible impact. And it's very cool to me to see how we as people can do something as simple as talking and sharing our story and just being our true selves, and how that can then in turn cause so much potential good. Vulnerability is also pretty attractive, I think, especially in an intimate relationship, like a romantic one with a partner. And it's not just me saying it, vulnerability genuinely does make you more intimate, science says so. The moment that you are being vulnerable may not be sexy or feel very sexy, but it's sexy to know someone that well. I don't mean like, oh, what a turn on, I just mean like intimacy in its beautiful form. I remember one night where Jamie and I were in the flat. Don't worry. Don't worry, this is not an X-rated story at all. And I just had a thought about how, like, what might happen if someone, like a family member or whatever, at some best man speech, I don't know, someone had an opportunity to share something about myself and my past that I hadn't told Jamie. And like, what happened if he really hated that? And then he like didn't like me anymore, you know, or didn't see me in the same way. And I was just like, Jesus, I have to tell him everything. I have to tell him everything right now. And that's what I did. I was just like, Jamie, I've got something to tell you. And he was really worried. I was just like, I don't want you to look at me. I need to tell you everything. And what followed was like a 4-hour conversation of us both sharing literally everything that we may not have spoken about in our lives that we could remember. And yes, it was embarrassing, and yes, I had butterflies in my tummy, and yes, I didn't have the best childhood growing up, and yes, I made some very, very stupid choices in my past. But guess what? He didn't leave me. If anything, it brought us way closer together, and I'm so glad he knows all of that about me now, because I just feel more intimate with him. Like, it's cool. And leading on from that, another benefit is that being vulnerable allows me, the person being vulnerable, to see things from a new perspective. If you could just appease me and just take a moment to think about one thing in your mind that is just so cringy or embarrassing that you've done. I have one. It's the one that I think about relatively often, actually, and long story short, might do a story time on it in more detail later, but basically I threw a house party because I had no friends. I offered my house up when someone else's house was not being offered up, and I had 50 people in my garden, someone painted themselves green, and my nan, like 5 minutes in, was shouting in the window, everyone had to go home, never lived it down. So embarrassing. Mortifyingly embarrassing. And I'm sure yours might not have been a failed house party where someone painted themselves green, but I'm sure that you have moments in your mind that are so embarrassing that it just sends shivers down your spine, and I get like this kind of tension here in my head that's like, oh! And my brain then creates tiny little bricks just above that memory. I slowly see it going behind a wall, and it's like, nope, not today, not today. And then yay, it's gone, until I'm confronted by it again when someone from that past pops up on my Facebook feed, or somebody talks about it, or oh, God knows what. But yeah, all these negative feelings, all of these shivers and the blah, 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 and the not today, that was a regular feeling that I experienced before I was able to be vulnerable. All of those physical, genuine physical reactions happened to me and affected me negatively before I was able to confront what happened. I never, ever in a million years thought that I would be able to share that story with you online, but here I am sharing it, and it's because I was able to be vulnerable to the person that I trusted. In my occasion, it was that night that I shared things with Jamie, and when I first shared this with Jamie and received his objective opinion, it was actually not as embarrassing as I was making it out to be myself. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh my god, this is abysmally, mortifyingly horrific. I can't believe I'm telling you I did this. Because anyone else who had known it beforehand and who had chastised me for it was saying, you're bad, Shaaba, you're evil, you're embarrassing, how could you do something like this? You're selfish, you suck, you have no friends. But Jamie provided a different point of view from someone who wasn't in that scenario at all, as a person who painted themselves green to come to the party, or another guest who was looking at my screaming nan from the window, or as a parent who was telling me off for doing what I did. Jamie helped me understand within myself why I felt the need to hold that kind of party in the first place. It's because I didn't fit in. I hated where I was. I was uncomfortable, I was lonely, I was in need of support, it was a cry for help. And I had no idea how to get it. And it doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't erase the fact that I was told off and, you know, I wasn't bullied. But, you know, like when you hear people talk, it doesn't stop those memories or those feelings coming back. But what it does do is justify why I did what I did. It helps shed extra light on my side of the story. I keep seeing that damn spider. It's not shifting blame. It's not victimizing myself. It's just seeing things through a different lens, an objective point of view. And that is a big benefit that I have found from vulnerability. Being vulnerable to the right person. I also feel that being vulnerable can help us learn to do more. You know, it doesn't hold us back. Because if you're holding something back, it's going to hold you back too. If you're constantly worried about what other people are thinking about you, how they're going to look at you, presenting a certain way, being this perfectionist, doing this, doing that, you're not really going to be able to do much without having those strings, like bungee rings around you, holding you back too. You're like, ugh! Lots of people say to me, oh my gosh, I can't believe you make videos like this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you share all of these things. I wouldn't have the power and the strength and the balls to do it if I wasn't able to be vulnerable and accept that, hey, you know what? I'm not a perfect person and that's okay. I'm still scared. I'm still nervous, but being vulnerable means that I can embrace those moments when things go wrong and I can be like, yeah, people are not incredible. People are broken. People do things that are wrong. And I, my love, are certainly no exception. So if I'm gonna do something and something's gonna go wrong, I'm gonna do it anyway. You know, I don't let the worry of what could be or how people might see me in a way that leaves me feeling exposed and vulnerable to hold me back from doing that thing. If it happens now, it happens. And I love being in this place. And I can safely say, and very confidently and cockily and arrogantly say, yeah, you know what, I am happy. I am successful. And there is no way that I'd be able to say any of those things if I didn't embrace my vulnerability to be able to say that. I hope that makes sense. I feel like this whole video is just a giant ramble. My final benefit to vulnerability and being vulnerable is that it hurts. I know that sounds so stupid. Hurting doesn't sound like a good thing unless you're like a sadomasochist. Hurting is sadomasochist? Masochist? Sadist? I don't even know anymore. My point is, generally, people don't like to be hurt. Especially not emotionally. I don't like being emotionally hurt, and I feel like a lot of emotional hurting has been happening recently. But you know what? It's important to feel those heartbreaks. It's important because it reminds me that there is care. And without those lows, our highs wouldn't be highs. And if we can't feel bad, then we can't feel good. So I'm grateful for the ability to feel. And also, without those lows, we wouldn't be living truthfully and we wouldn't be living human. And how boring would it be if we just had one monotonous level of feeling? Be vulnerable, and as a result, be sad. And be hurt, because only by unlocking that vulnerability can we truly be free. Might not work every day. There'll certainly be kryptonite to the superpower of vulnerability. Being vulnerable is not an easy state to achieve, and once you achieve it, you don't unlock it forever. I would consider myself an embracing person of vulnerability, but I'm still working on it every damn day. But it's worth it, because being naked with your emotions, just like being naked with your body, feels so good in the long run, and it does good overall. That is it from me, sweet peas. What the hell was this video? Seriously, I just kind of I've got brain farts, now I've got word vomits. I do truly hope though, I know I'm being kind of elusive with my own experiences, sometimes there are things that you see is just not appropriate to share, but I hope it's helped some of you. I hope it's helped one person see the importance of saying things or standing up for yourself and exposing how you feel in situations where you might be told or you might be conditioned to think that actually you shouldn't be doing that, because that's bull. That is so bull. And that is it from me, sweet peas. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, maybe consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'm gonna catch you next week, next Tuesday, with another video. Be kind and have a great day. Bye.